Caleb Williams, since we're kind of talking about him, so he hasn't thrown an interception in his last 9 games. We know that. I wanted to take a look more at his last 6 games, mainly because that's the divisional games that he's played in. And of course, that's probably, I think it's fair to say it's the best division in football, NFC North, by far. But his last 6 games, he's 136 for 211, which is 65.1% completion percentage, which is pretty damn good. 1,486 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 101.2 passer rating. And I think that right there, I don't think we've ever seen a quarterback, especially when you talk about Matt Eberflus was still coaching during this stretch, during those 6 games. I think 9 games ago was Shane Waldron was still involved. So it's like all these factors where he has had basically put on a platter for him to be, like he said, he has a lot of excuses to fail, to have, a lot of interceptions or to lose focus. And you could see today, even when, after his second touchdown pass, the will to win, the way he plays is just so unique, because like I think you said it earlier, Ficky, where it's like he hasn't allowed this to really break his spirit. He's still fired up. He wants to win. I think that 4th down call, in the 3rd quarter, where Thomas Brown decided to kick it to make it to go from a 3-score game to keep it as a 3-score game, which is that makes no sense to me. But he wanted to go for it there, and he was fired up on the sidelines. It looked like he was yelling in that direction of Thomas Brown. And so for me, I think the Bears have their guy, but I can't say this enough when it comes to this offseason, because it's just so important that they get it right, because I don't think we're going to see his full potential if they don't get it, if they get it wrong this year or this offseason.
For sure.
And the thing is, for me, I just feel so unlucky as a Bears fan, because I'm like, even if they get what they want, or they get what most people believe is going to happen, which is Ben Johnson, for some odd reason, and you guys tell me if you maybe feel the same way, what if he flops?
Well, that's always been my counter argument, is that you never, with the Bears, you never, first off, not even just the Bears, with these guys that are great play callers, right? You never know what they are as a head coach. Actually, we just saw that now. Thomas Brown was doing really well as a play caller, go to head coach. And of course, that's a little bit harder of a transition, because you just got bumped up, promoted twice within 3 weeks, and the team's a shit show. But you see, though, you add more responsibilities on your plate. There's a lot more delegation that you're doing. It's not just you calling plays. So there is always, and the history shows, a question mark with that. But the real question is it worth the risk? And at this point, you don't know if any of these guys are going to be it unless they've already been a head coach like a Mike Vrabel, right? Is it worth to take the risk with someone like a Ben Johnson? And I would say yes. Jack, I'd love to know your opinion on this. And I think I kind of know it, but I'd love you to speak on it. But I feel like you have to take that risk, because you need someone paired up with your quarterback. You need someone because you know that you have the guy. And what feels really good, and we were talking about this, right? The storylines of the NFL, like of the Chicago Bears, there weren't many other than the head coach, and we wouldn't really know more about what's going to happen unless there was tidbits from like the NFL insiders. But you saw Tom Pelissero today talk about, he released it out there. This stuff doesn't just get released. This is agents feeding information, whatever. And he said, they are Ben Johnson is very intrigued with the Bears job. He wants to make sure things are aligned. So now you have Tom Pelissero from NFL Network. You've had Ian Rappaport talk about it. Albert Breer talked about it weeks ago. And then I think Schefter has mentioned that the Bears are looking to go, quote, offensive minded. So you take all that information and you say, hey, look, when there's smoke, there's most likely fire. I would be shocked out of my mind if Ben Johnson isn't in Navy and Orange next year. But to go to you, Jack, do you feel like it's worth the risk to let's just take Ben Johnson out of it, but like, is it worth the risk to take an offensive-minded head coach first over somebody who may have more of a resume of already being a head coach and being successful at it?
Yeah, my stance a few shows ago, I don't remember which week it was, but it was very much in terms of like, let's get someone with the resume, head coach experience. Like, we want to lead our men. Let's get someone that's already led men. Now I'm kind of more open, I think. At this point, I'll take anything, for God's sake. Like, I really, there's not much you have to do to impress me at this point. Yeah. But I've you look around the league, all 31 other teams, like their head coaches had to start somewhere, like not everyone is a head coach that gets like switched into teams. Like you got to start with the coordinator. It is a unique situation because a lot of people say Dan Campbell will be nothing without Ben Johnson, but then you have to think like, would Ben Johnson be nothing without Dan Campbell and that organization, the way it's built? There's a lot of different things. He can absolutely be a bust. Like there's 0% guarantee that he is like the next Bill Belichick, So I don't know. It is tough, but at the end of the day, you do have to take a risk at some point. And I know that our entire, I would say the last 100 years has just been risk. But I just don't know who the safe option would be. Is it one? Right. So like, is there one that like we're debating between?
Yeah. I think it has to go with like a couple years from now, the Bears won't get mocked if they go with Ben Johnson because everybody, it's similar to like Caleb. It's like when they were drafting number 1, you the risk of not going with Caleb, huge. Which I know this doesn't mean a lot, but it's like if he does hit and you pass on him, similar to like Mahomes, it just looks awful. It looks awful. But with Ben Johnson, you take him, he just all signs, everything makes sense. You have a rookie quarterback, offensive minded. You're already making this shift because typically with the Bears, it goes offense or goes defense, offense. They just kind of go back and forth when it comes to those coaching cycles and when they kind of started over. And so they typically do that. So it just makes all the sense.
Crazy. They have done that. They went Lovey, Tressman, John Fox,
I think
Nagy, Eberflus. Yeah, that's crazy.
I think it makes sense though, because I think all franchises typically do that. I think I would have to go and do research, but if I had to bet like a betting man, I think this happens more often not where the ownership's like, okay, we're doing something different, enough with these offensive minded guys. That. But yeah, the Bears for sure, like in their history, especially in the last decade, maybe 15 years.
That's like 20 years now. That's back forth.
Exactly. And so for me personally, I hope the Bears just go with Ben Johnson because there was a comment here. Like, look, he's just so creative because we talked about that trick play that he did. So Kaylin Kaler of the Sun Times, I believe, no, ESPN and The Athletic, she was able to speak with the Lions, said the Jared Goff, Jamara Gibbs coordinated trip on the Laporta touchdown play is called Stumble Bum, which is funny. And it was a designed trip. But this is where it gets interesting. It was inspired by Ben Johnson drew inspiration from when he was watching Jordan Love actually trip against Chicago earlier in the year, and they pulled off a huge pass play in their first meeting. And so I just think that's
and then to pull it out on us is also hilarious.
But to coordinate it. And I think a guy like, a creative mind like Ben Johnson first of all, he's watching Bears Packers. I love that already. A lot of people do, but that's cool. But then to draw inspiration from a broken play to then coordinate that broken play to actually be like a fake or a trick play. It's just, we just haven't seen it on top of all the hook and ladders he's done already in the last, 8 weeks.
From a play scheme design, Ben Johnson's easy top 3. You got like Shanahan's, you got McVay, and you got Ben Johnson. And it's not just, Ben Johnson just did that this year. He's been doing it for by the end of this year, it'll be almost 3 years. So you've seen a lot of resume of like, this man, when it comes to designing plays, can do it. So I'm not worried about that aspect if we get Ben Johnson. We will get a well-designed offense. The issue is, not issue, but the question marks are, can he lead a team, right? Can he run a team, I should say? And then the second thing, which we're seeing now, is do we have the talent? Because at the end of the day, right, we do have Caleb, which is great to see. We do have wide receivers, which I think align, if not better, than what's in Detroit. But the one thing that Detroit has on us, and they've had for years, that's much better than us, is that offensive line. Last year, offensive line was like top 3 in the NFL. They've had some injuries this year, so it's not up there as high, but it's still very, very solid play. So can he adjust to how the weaknesses that we have on this team. And I think he can. And we didn't see that. You remember, we talked about this. We go back to Shane Waldron days. Sorry to take everyone back here to painful memories. But those are some of the things we were talking about was like, hey, why is he doing 5-step, 7-step drops when this offensive line is beat the hell up and the talent wasn't there? So you have 3 of your wide receivers running depth of target of like 12 yards. And it's like, dog, he needs 5 seconds to find someone open. And that's not going to happen because the line can only block for like 3, right? So yeah. I feel like if Ben Johnson comes in, he'll be able to understand those, weaknesses. So I say all that to be like, look, this is not a flash in the pan of Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson has showed us who he is from an offensive mind for years, and that's why he's such a hot commodity. So I think you have to take that risk. And Dave, you made a good point. You know what I mean? Like if you don't and it work, like if you pick it and it doesn't work out, look, you did what you were supposed to do. Sometimes things don't work out, right? Mm-hmm. But if you don't and he goes somewhere else and everyone and he ends up being like that Ben Johnson, like everyone expects.
New England. Say he goes New England or something like that with Drake May. It could be bad. That's all I'm saying. I think it's just it makes sense just to go with the right choice or the correct choice right now, because if you don't, no one's going to look back 3 years from now and be like, oh, I can't believe the Bears didn't do this, And at the same time, I just think offensively for Caleb, there's nothing that I don't think can go wrong with him. I think there's only going to be positives in regards to his development with Ben Johnson. Even if Ben Johnson's not a good coach and he's out after 3 years, I don't think it's going to be because the offense sucks. I think it'll be more because of the chemistry. Maybe he's just similar to like Shane Waldron, like where he just could not connect with his guys. I don't think Ben Johnson is going to be like that, or two different personalities, because you see him in Detroit. Everyone, the way they talk to the players, they love him. He seems like he's funny, down to earth. So I just don't think that, but that would be the only reason, in my opinion, if he does fail, would not be because of the offensive side, but more of like the leadership style. So because that can kind of grow. And grow similar like Matt Nagy. Honestly, it's like almost a spitting image where it's like Nagy was brilliant. His offense kind of sucked at times. It was more of like a reflection on his quarterback. Mitch was not that great.
He wasn't.
But Nagy was creative. And sometimes he got too cute, but at the same time, his shtick or whatever, finding the why kind of just, it fell on deaf ears. And Chicago, of course, is brutal as far as the media goes and kind of ran him out of town. And then we got Eberflus. So,
yep. That's a good point. Jack, can you bring up, because I think these will go to the conversation. I think it's good to talk about. Can you bring up Jimmy Butler's comment here first? First of all, thanks to Jimmy Butler. Yeah, we appreciate you in Miami taking time to hop on the BFR podcast. So he said, Ben Johnson is a fraud. He has 5-star athletes at every position. I want to debunk this to say what great coordinator doesn't have athletes. Like, when people are like, oh, wow, you're great, it's typically they have a good quarterback. They probably got at least one good wide receiver in a group of like decent running backs. So I don't think that's a fraud. You have to have it's a balance. You can't be. We just talked about Nagy, right? You could be I'd say he's a good play caller. You could be a good play caller, but if you don't have the talent, it's not going to be executed well, right? So you have to have the talent. That's got to be a part of it for you to be dominant. They have a good quarterback and they have good wide receivers. So do we.